You're probably about to waste an entire month of gardening time right now without even realizing it. Thousands of gardeners this week are walking into nurseries and buying flowers that are already doomed. It's not because those flowers are bad plants, and it's not because you did anything wrong either. It's because of one thing almost nobody at the garden center ever mentions: the calendar itself. There are 11 popular plants sitting on shelves this exact week that will fail if planted in July. Some rot within days, others simply vanish, leaving you thinking you killed another plant somehow. Really, the season killed it, not you. And that distinction matters more than people realize. Stick around because plant number 11 even surprises experienced gardeners who've done this for years. It looks tough enough to survive anything, and July destroys it faster than almost anything else here. If you've ever bought something perfect looking that fell apart 2 weeks later, this explains why. That confusion and self-blame ends today, once you understand what's really happening underground. Here's what's actually happening in July that nobody bothers explaining at the garden center. Soil temperature and air temperature are not the same thing, and that distinction explains everything. When the ground itself heats up past a certain point, root systems stop doing what they're supposed to. They stop pulling in water efficiently and stop growing the tiny hair-like structures new plants need. Instead, roots sit there in overheated soil, basically cooking from the outside in while leaves look fine. That's the scary part. Everything looks okay on the surface while real damage happens underground. Add humidity to that mix, and you've got a second problem piling on top of the first one: fungal rot. Warm, damp soil is the perfect breeding ground for organisms that cause rot in vulnerable root balls. A freshly transplanted root ball is soft and vulnerable, with almost zero defense against that threat. That vulnerability window typically lasts several weeks, which is exactly the stretch July heat exploits. Then there's transplant shock too. Moving a plant from a cool nursery pot into hot soil is already a lot. Do that in July, and you're forcing the plant to fight heat stress and root establishment simultaneously. That's the trap, and it's exactly why these 11 plants fail more often in July than any other time. Every single one of them looks fine at the nursery, which is exactly what makes this mistake so easy. Plant 1 is Delphinium, and honestly, this one punishes impatience faster than almost anything else. Tall, dramatic spires of blue, purple, and white flowers make a bed look expensive and intentional. Underneath that impressive height, the root system is shockingly shallow for how tall this plant grows. That mismatch between height and root depth is genuinely what makes this plant so vulnerable to heat. Most people assume a tall plant means a deep, sturdy root system, but Delphinium proves that assumption wrong. In July, when soil temperatures spike and stay high for weeks, Delphinium roots simply can't handle it. What follows is crown rot, a slow blackening at the base that starts underground, where you can't see it. That underground starting point is exactly why the damage feels so sudden once it finally shows above ground. By the time leaves turn yellow, the damage is already done, and it's genuinely too late to fix. Nurseries sell whatever's currently flowering, which has nothing to do with what's safe to plant now. Keep that distinction in mind every time you walk through a garden center display in the coming months. Delphinium wants cool, stable soil in early spring or early fall to establish those shallow roots properly. Skip the July planting, wait for fall instead, and save yourself the cost of a plant that wasn't going to make it. It's a genuinely simple fix once you know the pattern, even though it feels counterintuitive at first. Plant 2 is lupine, and this one catches people off guard because it genuinely looks tough at first glance. Tall, dense flower spikes and sturdy architectural foliage give off serious survive-anything energy. It cannot handle July, not even a little, and the reason comes down to what's happening underground. Lupine grows a long, deep taproot, anchoring straight down instead of spreading sideways like most plants. That taproot is efficient once established, but incredibly fragile during the actual transplanting process. If you disturb that taproot in cool spring soil, it has a real shot at recovering and pushing new growth. Disturb that exact same taproot in soil baking under July sun, and the damaged tissue can't repair fast enough. Hot soil makes that fragility so much worse, and damaged tissue can't repair itself fast enough in heat. The plant basically dehydrates from the root up, and no amount of watering can fix a root already breaking down. Lupine wants early spring soil while it's still cool, or better yet, Start it from seed to skip transplanting. Get that timing right, and lupine gives height and color that most summer flowers simply can't touch. Most people don't even realize taproots behave completely differently from fibrous, spread-out roots. Plant 3 is primrose, which feels beginner-friendly since it's sold everywhere, even at gas stations. That easy availability is exactly what makes this particular mistake so common among new gardeners. Primrose needs consistently cool, consistently moist soil every single day, without any real gaps. It evolved in cooler, damper climates, so its roots never built up any real tolerance for heat stress. In July, even with religious watering, soil dries out faster than those roots can possibly keep up with. That gap between watering effort and actual soil moisture is exactly what catches most people off guard. The plant starts collapsing within the first week, leaves going limp and flowers dropping almost overnight. It's honestly one of the more heartbreaking things to watch happen to a plant you were excited about. Primrose belongs in the ground during early spring or fall, tucked into partial shade for cooler soil. Nail that timing, and primrose becomes one of the easiest, longest blooming flowers you'll ever grow. It's genuinely worth the small wait, since the payoff in bloom length is hard to match elsewhere. Plant 4 is bearded iris, trusted because it just looks indestructible with thick, sword-shaped foliage. That toughness is real, but only under the right conditions, and July definitely isn't one of them. Bearded iris grows from a rhizome that sits partially exposed at the soil surface for air circulation. In July, hot soil traps moisture around that rhizome after every watering or rainfall event. That combination of heat plus dampness is exactly the recipe bacterial rot needs to take hold fast. Once rot starts inside a rhizome, there's no reversing it, and the whole plant collapses from inside out. The tissue goes soft and mushy, often smelling noticeably foul before the plant visibly declines above ground. Most people plant the rhizome too deep thinking it's more secure, which actually traps even more moisture. That single misconception is responsible for a huge share of failed bearded iris plantings every year. Bearded iris wants late summer or early fall planting once soil temperatures drop and moisture stabilizes. Keep the rhizome partially exposed as it wants, and iris returns reliably year after year with little effort. That partial exposure isn't optional either. It's genuinely how this plant naturally stays healthy. Plant 5 is columbine, fooling people because it seems too delicate to actually be dangerous in July. These nodding, bell-shaped flowers on thin, wiry stems look fragile in a genuinely charming way. The issue lives entirely in the roots, which are thin and fine with almost zero buffer against heat. In cool spring soil, they're fine since moisture stays available near the surface where roots sit shallow. In July, a single stretch of intense heat, sometimes just 2 or 3 days, can wilt it past recovery. Even watering it every single day during that stretch often isn't enough to save a newly transplanted one. People assume delicate columbine needs more water, but the real issue was never dryness, it's temperature. That's a subtle but important distinction that changes how you should actually respond to wilting. Columbine wants early spring or fall planting, ideally somewhere with afternoon shade for gentler swings. Get that right, and columbine self-seeds for you, giving fresh new plants every year with zero effort. It's genuinely one of the more rewarding perennials once you plant it during the right window. Plant 6 is bleeding heart, which has a reputation problem that's about to catch out anyone planting now. Arching stems strung with heart-shaped blooms make this one of the most distinctive perennials around. It has a built-in survival strategy, though, designed to go dormant in summer heat, not die, but sleep. As temperatures climb, foliage naturally yellows and disappears, even on a perfectly healthy plant. That's just normal biology at work, not a sign of failure or something you did wrong as a gardener. Plant it in July, and you force a fragile new root system into dormancy before it's had any real chance. The plant shuts down before it ever had a foundation to shut down from in the first place. That's genuinely one of the more counterintuitive failures in gardening, since the plant looks fine at purchase. Bleeding heart belongs in the ground during early spring or fall in partial to full shade. Give those roots a full season to establish, and this plant comes back every spring like clockwork. That reliability is exactly why it's remained a favorite in shade gardens for so many generations. Plant 7 is Oriental Poppy, which punishes people twice for the same mistake without them realizing it. Enormous papery flowers with dark, almost bruised centers make every bloom look dramatic and exotic. Like bleeding heart, it has natural summer dormancy built into its biology regardless of plant health. Poppy adds a second layer, though, since its root system genuinely hates being disturbed at any time. Planted in July, and you combine transplant shock with the exact moment biology says to shut down. Those two stresses stack on each other, and survival rates drop off a genuine cliff at that point. People often mistake a dormant poppy for a dying one, which leads to unnecessary panic and overwatering. People see a fading poppy in summer, assume it's dying, and either overwater it or dig it up entirely. Oriental poppy should be planted in fall while dormant or very early spring before growth kicks back in. Get that timing right, and poppy rewards you with blooms dramatic enough to stop neighbors on the sidewalk. Those papery petals genuinely photograph beautifully once the plant is properly established in the ground. We're 7 plants deep now, and the next 4 start getting genuinely more expensive to get wrong. The pattern so far has been about timing, but from here it also becomes about real financial cost. Plant 8 is Peony, where the list stops being about small mistakes and starts being about costly ones. Peonies aren't cheap, and getting the timing wrong here costs you an entire year of bloom you won't get back. That's a real financial hit on top of the emotional disappointment of a bare, flowerless spring bed. Enormous, ruffled flowers with rich fragrance make peonies the plant people build entire beds around. They're also one of the most timing-sensitive perennials you can buy, full stop, no exceptions. Peonies need a specific fall window to establish roots before winter dormancy hits completely. That root development is directly tied to how many blooms you get the following spring season. Plant in July, and you skip that critical fall window, leaving roots without enough reserve buildup. Next spring, instead of dramatic full blooms, you get a handful of weak flowers, sometimes none at all. That's a genuinely painful outcome for a plant this expensive and this slow to reach full maturity. Peonies want early to mid-fall planting, giving roots months to settle before spring growth begins. Get that timing right, and a single peony can bloom in the same spot reliably for 50 years or more. It genuinely might outlive the person who originally planted it, which is a remarkable kind of legacy. Plant 9 is Fuchsia, and this is where the list starts getting genuinely more brutal for beginners. Delicate, dangling flowers shaped like tiny ballerina skirts give Fuchsia an exotic, tropical look. That look is exactly why people assume it can handle serious heat, when it's actually the complete opposite. Fuchsia is confirmed through horticultural research as one of the most heat-vulnerable plants at garden centers. Its root system and leaf tissue are both extremely sensitive to sustained high temperatures over time. Hit with that sustained heat right after transplanting, Fuchsia doesn't just wilt and bounce back overnight. The internal tissue actually gets damaged, and often that plant never fully recovers despite good care. Even attentive watering and shade can't always undo damage that's already happened at the cellular level. Fuchsia is built for mild, temperate climates, struggling hard once temperatures climb into typical July range. It should be planted in spring or early summer, or kept in containers you can move into shade. Get that timing right, and Fuchsia gives color that lasts from spring all the way into fall reliably. Those dangling ballerina skirt blooms genuinely become a highlight of the garden with proper timing. Plant 10 is Astilbe, which convinces people they found something bulletproof right before proving otherwise. Feathery, plume-like flower spikes over fern-like foliage give it a reputation as a reliable shade staple. That reputation isn't wrong exactly, it's just missing one critical detail about proper timing. Astilbe is confirmed through horticultural testing as one of the worst performers under sustained summer heat. The problem is moisture retention mixed with heat, since it needs consistently damp soil to thrive. In July, that same moisture sitting in overheated ground stresses the root system instead of helping it. A newly planted Astilbe lacks the established root network needed to buffer against that particular stress. So it wilts fast, and recovery is far less reliable than most people expect from something marketed as easy. Astilbe should go in the ground during early spring or fall, somewhere shaded with moisture-retentive soil. Get that timing right, and Astilbe genuinely becomes exactly as low maintenance as everyone claims. That gap between reputation and reality is really just a matter of respecting the right planting window. Plant 11 is hydrangea, the one teased at the very beginning. And here's exactly why it earned that spot. Massive rounded flower clusters and broad glossy leaves make hydrangea one of America's most beloved shrubs. It's also the plant that fails most dramatically when planted in July, and the reason has nothing to do with roots. It's the leaves, since hydrangea leaves are enormous compared to most shrubs, causing rapid water loss. In cooler months, that's manageable, but in July's intense heat, those broad leaves lose moisture too fast. A newly planted root system simply can't keep up with that rate of evaporation from the leaf surface. The result is immediate, visible wilting, sometimes within hours of the plant going into the ground. Leaf scorch follows next, crispy brown edges that permanently damage foliage even if the plant survives. That kind of visible, fast damage is exactly why people assume they did something wrong with the soil. Because the damage shows up so fast, people panic and assume they messed up soil or fertilizer somehow. The real cause is almost always just the month. And the exact same plant in April shows none of these symptoms. Hydrangea wants early spring or fall planting, with morning sun and afternoon shade for gentler conditions. Get that timing right, and hydrangea becomes the reliable, jaw-dropping centerpiece it's actually famous for. Instead of the crispy disappointment July planting turns it into, you get the shrub everyone envies. So if these 11 plants are off the table this month, what can you actually plant right now instead? Plenty, honestly, as long as you're picking plants genuinely built for heat, not just ones that tolerate it. Start with coneflower, which thrives in full sun and handles poor soil without complaint at all. It actually establishes faster in warm soil than in cool spring conditions, making July one of its best windows. That's genuinely the opposite pattern from everything else covered so far on this entire list. Black-eyed Susan follows the same pattern, genuinely heat-loving and drought-tolerant once established. It blooms right through the hottest weeks of summer without missing a beat, regardless of planting time. That reliability makes it one of the safest choices for anyone planting in the middle of summer heat. Russian sage is another great option, performing better in lean, poor, dry soil than rich garden beds. Summer heat is literally the environment this plant evolved to handle without trying particularly hard. It's genuinely one of the most forgiving choices you can make if you're planting in the peak of July. For color specifically, look at zinnias or marigolds, both annuals that germinate quickly in warm soil. They bloom fast and were basically built for exactly the conditions that destroy everything else on this list. If you want instant color without any of the timing risk, these annuals are genuinely your safest bet. The pattern matters more than specific names, though. Heat-tolerant and deep-rooted plants are July's friends. Shallow-rooted, moisture-dependent, dormancy-prone plants are July's victims, plain and simple. Learn to spot which category a plant falls into before buying it, and you'll never waste money on timing again. That single skill genuinely saves more money over the years than almost anything else in gardening. Here's a simple month-by-month plan so this whole list becomes useful instead of just a warning. In early spring, roughly March through April depending on zone, plant delphinium, lupine, and primrose. Also plant columbine, bleeding heart, and oriental poppy during that same cool, stable spring window. Soil is cool, moisture stays naturally consistent, giving these plants the calm establishment they need. That 6-plant group shares the same fundamental need for cool, stable conditions during establishment. In fall, roughly September through October, plant bearded iris, peony, astilbe, and hydrangea instead. This is genuinely the better window for these 4, not some kind of compromise or fallback option. Cooling soil temperatures let roots establish through fall and winter, setting up stronger spring growth. That fall window is actually the ideal timing these 4 plants were built around from the start. Fuchsia sits in its own category, best planted in spring or very early summer before serious heat arrives. Treat it as container-friendly if your summers run hot, so you can move it into shade when needed. Right now, in July, your job isn't planting these 11, it's watering and monitoring what's already growing. Watch for early stress signs like wilting or leaf scorch and bookmark this list for the right window. That kind of patient monitoring genuinely protects the investment you've already made in your garden. Write these windows down somewhere or set a phone reminder so you're ready when the season actually opens. How you use this list really depends on where you're at in your own gardening journey right now. If you're just starting out, treat this as permission to slow down instead of planting everything immediately. Wait for the right season, and your success rate with every plant on this list will jump dramatically. That means way less frustration and way less money wasted along the way for a beginning gardener. Patience really is the underrated skill that separates a thriving garden from a frustrating one. If you've been gardening for years, this is your reminder that experience doesn't cancel out timing. Even seasoned gardeners get impulsive in July, especially when a plant looks perfect sitting right there. Use what you learned here to catch that impulse buy and redirect the energy toward fall planning instead. Even years of experience won't override a mistimed planting, so this reminder applies to everyone. Either way, the plants themselves aren't really the problem. Timing is the actual issue every single time. Respect that, and every plant on this list can eventually thrive in your garden, just not this month. Give each one its proper season, and there's genuinely no reason any of them should ever disappoint you. If this saved you from wasting money this month, send it to a friend about to make one of these mistakes. They'll genuinely thank you later, probably right after their third dead delphinium of the season. If you're not subscribed yet, this channel breaks down exactly this kind of detail every single week. Drop a comment telling us which plant you're saving for fall, and we'll see you in the next one. Stop guessing with your garden and start timing it right from this point forward. Your future garden and your future budget will genuinely thank you for the small bit of patience.